Have you ever been hurt by someone who pretended nothing ever happened? Have you found yourself second-guessing your feelings, wondering if you're the problem, or if you're simply imagining things? If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. In this video, we're diving deep into a truth that most people either ignore or don't understand: emotional manipulation, and more importantly, how to heal from it by setting strong, clear boundaries. But before we dive in, hit that subscribe button. If you're serious about self-mastery, emotional clarity, and living a life aligned with your highest values, this channel is for you. Let's get into the core of how manipulators work and how you can walk away stronger, not broken. 1. The illusion of forgetfulness. They didn't forget, they chose not to remember. Some people hurt you and then come back like nothing ever happened. No apology, no accountability, just a casual message or call, as if your pain never existed. It's as if they're hoping that enough time has passed for the wound to scab over, so they can slip back into your life unnoticed. But deep down, you feel that sting all over again. You remember every word, every slight, every betrayal, and their silence makes it worse. Let's be clear. They didn't forget. They remember what they did. They're just too afraid to face it. The human mind doesn't simply erase things that caused conflict or pain. These people make a choice, a very calculated one. They know what happened, but it's more convenient to pretend it didn't. They're not reaching out in innocence. They're reaching out in avoidance, hoping to reset the relationship without doing any of the work to rebuild the trust they broke. This behavior is not about amnesia. It's about avoidance. It's a defense mechanism rooted in fear. Fear of seeing themselves as flawed. Fear of owning their guilt. Fear of losing the mask they wear. If they admitted to what they did, they'd have to change. They'd have to face the discomfort of seeing themselves as the one who caused harm. That level of honesty is too heavy for someone who thrives on denial. So instead, they act like nothing happened. It's easier to keep up the facade than to face the fallout. And what happens to you? You're left confused, emotionally destabilized, and questioning your own worth. You start wondering if maybe it really wasn't that big of a deal. Maybe you're overreacting. Maybe it's time to just move on. But that's the trap. That's how the cycle continues, through your doubt and their silence. This emotional whiplash can cause deep internal conflict, making you question not just the relationship, but your ability to trust your own judgment. The moment you realize their silence on the past is not innocence but strategy, you take your first step toward healing. You stop waiting for acknowledgement. You start creating boundaries. You no longer beg for closure from those who never intended to give it. You begin to understand that people who refuse to own their behavior are not safe places for your heart. Healing doesn't require their apology, it requires your clarity. And once you see the truth, you can never unsee it. You stop, reopening doors that were meant to stay closed. 2. Emotional immaturity and the fear of accountability. Emotional manipulation often stems from emotional immaturity. When people lack the tools to process guilt, shame, or regret, they don't take responsibility. They project, deflect, or deny. Instead of having a difficult conversation or expressing remorse, they retreat into behaviors that keep them from facing themselves. That's not maturity. That's self-preservation at the cost of connection. And if you're the one on the receiving end, you feel like you're constantly being gaslit for wanting basic respect. It's easier for them to make you the villain than to face their own reflection. To admit fault would mean they're flawed, and fragile egos can't bear the weight of that. So they rewrite history. They cherry-pick moments that make them look better, and you look worse. In their version, you were irrational, dramatic, or demanding. It becomes a performance where they cast themselves as the victim of your expectations and emotions. And that's when the mind games begin. They might say you're too sensitive or overreacting. They might twist the narrative so well that you begin to question if you're overthinking everything. One moment you're standing firm in your truth, and the next, you're doubting your own memory. That confusion is exactly what they want. It gives them control. Because if they can make you unsure of your feelings, they never have to address their actions. Accountability feels like a threat to the emotionally immature. Why? Because it forces them to confront a version of themselves they're not ready to meet. To take responsibility means admitting that they caused pain. And people who haven't developed emotional resilience will do almost anything to avoid that discomfort. They would rather lose you than face themselves. It's not about love, it's about control. And sometimes their pride matters more to them than the people they claim to care about. But here's the truth. Their inability to grow isn't your burden to carry. Recognizing this gives you back your agency and your peace. You're not crazy. You're not asking too much. You're asking for maturity, honesty, and emotional respect, things that emotionally immature people simply don't know how to give. And while you can empathize with their struggle, it's not your job to fix them. Your job is to protect your peace and surround yourself with people who don't flinch at accountability. 3. The power of silence. When you say nothing, you say everything. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Not because you're weak, afraid, or unsure, but because you've finally seen through the performance. Silence is often misunderstood. Some interpret it as retreat, but in truth, it's a bold move. It says, I will not participate in this dysfunction anymore. You remove your energy, your words, your emotions, everything they once used to bait you back into the same toxic cycle. Silence isn't weakness. It's a boundary. It's control. It's choosing your peace over pointless battles. When you've explained yourself 100 times and been met with dismissal, when your feelings have been minimized or mocked, you reach a point where words lose their meaning. That's when silence becomes sacred. It's the only language manipulators can't twist. It's a wall they can't climb. It puts the power back in your hands. When manipulators attempt to trigger you, whether through gaslighting, guilt-tripping, or playing the victim, your silence starves them of power. They feed on your reactions. Your anger gives them fuel. Your pain gives them validation. Your confusion gives them control. But when you go quiet, the game ends. Suddenly, they're left with themselves. No audience, no victim, no scapegoat. Just the reflection they've been avoiding all along. You don't owe a reaction. You don't owe explanations to those who have repeatedly shown they're not interested in understanding you. If someone constantly invalidates your feelings, they've forfeited the right to hear your voice. Silence is not rudeness, it's wisdom. It's knowing that your time and energy are valuable and not everyone deserves access to them, especially not those who use your openness as ammunition. Silence is not about passive aggression, it's about active protection. It's reclaiming the energy that would otherwise be drained in endless emotional warfare. You stop explaining, you stop arguing, you stop hoping they'll change. Instead, you retreat to a place of quiet strength, where peace becomes your armor. And from that place, you rebuild, stronger, wiser, unreachable. Remember this, walking away in silence is louder than screaming in chaos. It's not about winning the argument, it's about ending the war. And when you choose silence, you choose yourself. That's not cowardice, that's power. 4. Reacting versus responding, regaining emotional command. Emotional manipulation thrives in impulsive reactions. When someone gets under your skin and you lash out without pause, you hand them the script to your emotions. This is precisely what your manipulators hope for, a trigger they can pull to make you dance to their tune. The moment you react without thinking, you're no longer in control. They are. They've found the lever that controls your emotional state. and each time you erupt, you reinforce their power. Think of it like a game of chess. If you move without strategy, your opponent anticipates your every step. Emotional manipulators are like expert players in this game, baiting you with provocations, waiting for you to give up your power in a moment of weakness. Reaction is immediate. It's unconscious. It's usually regretful. Reactions come from our primal brain: fight, flight, or freeze. We react when our nervous system is overwhelmed, when we feel threatened, when our self-image is pierced. And while reacting may feel satisfying for a split second, it often leads to damage we later wish we could undo. Words said in anger, actions taken out of spite, silence that lasts too long. These are the echoes of reactions that weren't filtered by thought. Reactions don't just hurt others, they trap us in patterns of regret, shame, and frustration. And worse, manipulators count on this. The more you react, the more predictable you become. The more predictable you are, the easier you are to control. Response is intentional. It's conscious. It's composed. Responding means you've activated a higher part of your mind, the rational, reflective part. It doesn't mean you're unaffected. It means you've trained yourself to pause and assess before acting. A response is rooted in values, not emotions. It asks, what outcome do I want? What version of myself do I want to show up right now? When you respond, you reclaim control of the narrative. You shift from being the puppet to becoming the playwright. This doesn't happen overnight. It takes mindfulness, emotional discipline, and self-awareness. But once you master it, you become far more difficult to manipulate. Instead of firing back in the heat of the moment, take a breath. Pause. Then ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Most of the time, it isn't. Peace is a currency far more valuable than temporary victories. Most provocations are traps, bait designed to drag you into conflict that benefits someone else. When you pause, even for a few seconds, you interrupt that cycle. You create space. And in that space, you give yourself time to remember who you are and what you stand for. A single breath can be the difference between falling into the old pattern or creating a new one. Emotional manipulators hate pauses because pauses mean power has shifted back to you. Choosing to respond rather than react doesn't make you emotionless. It makes you emotionally intelligent. Emotional intelligence is the skill of feeling everything but choosing your actions wisely. It means you can be hurt but not lash out, angry but not cruel, disappointed but not destructive. Emotional intelligence is not suppression, it's navigation. It's having a full range of emotions, but steering them instead of letting them steer you. This is what separates a person who is easy to exploit from one who stands firm in their integrity. And emotional intelligence is what separates those who get manipulated from those who rise above it. When you are emotionally intelligent, you no longer become an easy target for guilt trips, gaslighting, or emotional blackmail. You see through the tactics. You recognize when someone is using your feelings against you, and instead of falling into their trap, you pause, reflect, and choose your next step. You stop handing over the remote control to your emotions and start holding it yourself. This is emotional command. Not the absence of emotion, but the presence of self-mastery. 5. Strategic questions and boundary setting, tools for emotional freedom. One of the most disarming ways to deal with manipulation is to ask strategic questions. When someone is trying to twist reality or steer a conversation to suit their agenda, a well-placed question can halt that momentum entirely. Questions make people pause. They flip the script. Instead of being pulled into someone else's emotional chaos, you ground yourself by calmly shifting the focus. You don't need to scream or accuse to make an impact. A simple, thoughtful question can be more powerful than 1,000 angry words. It sends a message: I see what you're trying to do, and I'm not playing along. Not to attack, but to reveal, to bring light to the darkness in a conversation. Strategic questions aren't weapons, they are mirrors. They expose intention. They make others sit with their own words and actions. For example, if someone is guilt-tripping you, instead of defending yourself, you might say, "What are you hoping I'll feel after saying that?" If someone is shifting blame, ask, "How do you see your part in this situation?" These are not sarcastic digs. They are calm, direct, and intended to pierce the fog of manipulation. Even if the other person doesn't answer honestly, the question changes the tone. It reclaims the power dynamic. Instead of accusing someone of lying, you might ask, "What made you feel that was the right thing to do?" It opens space for introspection, whether they take it or not. This kind of question removes the accusation while still demanding accountability. It doesn't corner them, it invites them. That invitation is often declined by those with manipulative tendencies, but that's not the point. The point is you've stayed in control. You've asked a question that makes the truth harder to avoid, and even if the manipulator dodges it, others around you may notice the dodge. The air shifts, the power shifts, and most importantly, you remain centered. But questions alone won't heal you. Boundaries will. Boundaries are where healing truly begins. You can ask all the clever questions in the world, but if you don't enforce your limits, manipulation will continue. Boundaries are not about fixing the other person. They're about protecting yourself. They mark the line between what's acceptable and what's not, and they are not theoretical, they are lived. A boundary doesn't just exist in your head. It shows up in your choices, your actions, and your willingness to walk away when necessary. A boundary is not a punishment, it's protection. It says, "This is what I allow, and this is where I walk away." Too many people hesitate to set boundaries because they don't want to seem mean or cold. But boundaries are not about being harsh. They are about being clear. Clarity is kindness. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and others is to state plainly where you stand. When you have boundaries, manipulators lose their grip. They can no longer yank you in every direction. They either adapt or they exit. Either way, you win. You don't need to shout them. You don't need to justify them. You just need to live them. Boundaries aren't enforced with rage or elaborate explanations. They're reinforced by consistent behavior. If someone crosses your line and you calmly follow through with your stated consequence, that sends a louder message than any emotional outburst ever could. Quiet consistency beats loud threats. People may test your boundaries at first, especially if they benefited from your lack of them. But over time, your quiet strength will speak for itself. Like saying, "If this continues, I will distance myself." That's not cruelty, that's clarity. It's not a threat, it's a truth. It's a reminder that your time, energy, and emotional well-being are not available to those who abuse them. And if someone takes offense at your boundary, that's information too. Those who love you, respect you, or wish to grow with you will honor your limits. Those who resent your boundaries were benefiting from your lack of them. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors, and you get to choose who walks through them. A wall shuts everyone out, a door lets the right ones in. Boundaries create the space for healthy relationships to grow while keeping dysfunction at bay. They help you see who respects you and who only seeks to use you. And ultimately, boundaries don't just protect you from others, they teach you to protect yourself. They're not selfish, they're essential. Without them, you'll bleed yourself dry trying to please people who never deserved access to you in the first place. You're not cold, you're healing. Let me remind you, protecting your peace doesn't make you cold, it makes you conscious. You're not weak for walking away. You're not heartless for going silent. You're healing, and healing requires boundaries. Emotional manipulators want you confused, reactive, and dependent on their validation, but you've seen through the game. So choose clarity, choose stillness, choose self-respect. If this message spoke to your soul, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, because we're building a community of warriors who heal, grow, and lead from within. Until next time, protect your peace, hold your power, and never apologize for choosing yourself.